What's up, guys? Mr. Johnson comes to you guys, continuing our discussion on Chapter 16, Section 2. So we're going to pick up where we left off in last section by talking about the trial. So trial part 2. So after both sides have presented their arguments, after they called for witnesses and things like that, each lawyer will make a closing statement that summarizes his or her argument. So this is where they would stand up and say, this is why I believe my client is guilty, or this is why my client is innocent, depending on which side you are on. The judge then tells the jurors what they can and cannot consider under the law in reaching their verdict. So that judge will basically say, here's the information you can use, here's the ones you cannot use. Finally, the jury will leave the courtroom to deliberate. They will sit in the room and able to discuss the case. If there is a reasonable doubt of guilt, the jury must acquit the defendant. The jury must find him or her not guilty of the crime. Okay, so that will be what the jury does. So sentencing, if the defendant is found guilty, so if the jury finds the defendant guilty, the judge decides on the punishment or the sentence. Some states have established mandatory sentences for certain crime. So what is the exact punishment? Some states tell you. Other states, the judge decides based off their education and their background. That is the law. That is the law requires judges to give certain punishments of certain crimes. Plea bargaining. So most cases in the United States never go to trial. They are taken care of quickly by plea bargaining. So in a plea bargain, the defendant makes a plea guilty to a lesser offense than the original charge. Under a plea bargain agreement, the penalty is usually lighter than if the trial found the defendant guilty. So they do that mainly just to save money in terms of having the trial, or simply to save time if the defense knows knows of the results of the trial would be. They may ask for a plea bargain, and then we'll discuss more of this in depth later, as well as you'll probably learn more about this too when you get to high school and you talk about government. So imprisonment. So less serious crimes may be punished only with fines, or with fines plus a suspension sentence, or in pro, pro so in which a person is not in prison unless he or she violates the condition imposed by the court's order. So more serious crimes are typically punished by imprisonment. So that's what happens depending on your crime. Parole. So after serving part of your sentences, many prisoners are eligible for parole, or what we call early release. People are paroled on the condition that they must obey certain rules and stay out of trouble. Parole is generally granted to prisoners who behave well and who have signs of rehabilitation, which means they believe that prisoner will not recommit that crime that they broke. So capital punishment. The harshest punishment of crimes committed in the United States is called capital punishment, or the death penalty. We're not going to go into great detail into this topic in capital punishment, only because it's very controversial, and I prefer for us not to go into too depth as to what it is and what it includes. So that is it for section 2 for chapter 16. Tune in tomorrow for section 3, part 1. We will talk about juvenile crime. Remember, guys, stay safe, study, and go Tigers.